Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Turn
All right.
on the mics.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the Rolesville Town Board of Commissioners work session, February 21, 2023. And we got 3 or 4 items on the agenda tonight. Going to welcome the guest. I think we got a guest. So welcome them and the staff that's here. Appreciate that. Not a lot of things, but we just kind of want to cover them. We are missing Paul, his grandmother, I believe, is a grandmother that passed away. So he's up in West Virginia. Won't be with us tonight. And I hadn't heard from Michelle. I don't think, has anybody heard from Michelle? So she's probably running a little bit late. She'll be here more than likely. So, but we'll go ahead and get started. I think we've got enough to have the quorum. So with that, the first item is overview of communication strategy. That's Lindsay, I think. So you want to come up and kind of walk us through that, what your thoughts are and your plans?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak this evening and give you a brief overview of communications. First and foremost, I want to quickly go over what I observed coming in October until the present now. And so I want to highlight that due to an absence of a communications employee here, there has been, the role of communications has been dispersed among a lot of the staff, whether they have the capability to do those things or not, and even the bandwidth to do it. So there's been a lack of consistency in what to communicate, how, and who manages what. So that's the first thing that I noticed. The second thing was a lack of engagement, and that included with the community as far as social platforms and even internally just a little bit, because people didn't know where to go or who to go to get guidance in that area of communications. And then I also met with the department heads to see what it was that they needed and or wanted in terms of communication. So we have some projects that's coming up that should be very exciting. And I also spoke with some outside relationships. Bill Crabtree, Stacy Beard, Mark Savage, and a few others, just to get guidance for myself, because they were in the space that I was in once before, as the only communications person where they were working in their town. And now, the present, I've seen growth and engagement as far as like our social platforms. I've built some relationships with media, so that's great. And I've seen that a lot of the staff have come to me for guidance in certain areas, because I'm sure they're feeling more comfortable now. They're getting to know me, I'm getting to know them. So that's just a quick overview. The next thing I want to talk about is structuring communications, internal communications, and I created a communications policy, and I believe that you all should have received that. And I just want to highlight the things the bullet points that I have on the screen, and we'll start with the purpose of it. So I draft the communications policy specifically for the internal staff. It serves as a resource to assist in navigating communication efforts as a town employee. Some of the sections that are included in that is managing software programs, social media ethic, website and public information requests and protocol, and the use of our branding and our logo. There's also an issue assessment within there, and what that is a list of questions to consider if something arises with the media or outside source, so you can know whether that problem is significant or not, and whether it needs a response immediately. So also the departmental communication and projects. I talked with all of the departments, but I wanted to highlight these two. The planning department, we talked about doing tour talks similar to TED Talks, and what that would be just quick inserts or video clips about what the public needs to know or what they may be curious about in terms of that department. And again, it's just quick, 30 seconds to a minute. You know, we have very short, our time is very short these days, and people, they immediately just get bored with things. So it's important for it to be knowledgeable but quick. And then also beyond the badge, I talked to Chief Simmons earlier, and we spoke about maybe doing some type of video series. And what that would consist of is beyond the badge. So more than just what you see, the public sees the police maybe arresting someone or whatever the case is, or coming in checking, but beyond the badge would be maybe at his desk talking a little bit about some of the protocols that are established or needs to be established in certain situations, maybe a crime, what have you. If you're walking to your car at night and you know you're scared, you're leaving the work building and you need somebody to assist you, you can definitely call the police, and people may not know about those benefits that you have. And then also we talked about just going to businesses or establishments and checking in on them. Nothing has to be wrong, but just making your presence known in the community. And also, before I get to the communication strategy, a few other things that we talked about for internal staff. We talked about internships with the town. A lot of the students have been asking about that opportunity. So I've been in communication with Nancy Evans, who is the career advisor for Rolesville High School. And so we've been in conversation back and forth to see what would be best, whether it would be maybe a walkthrough of the town hall building for students to see what goes on, if actually having an internship is not able to happen on this go-round this year. So just getting our engagement up. Also, we talked about intranet. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but it's an internal system for employees, much like a website, where you can go and you can have town documents that are easily accessible there. You can also have recognition of town employees' birthdays, events, things of that sort. And your W-2 information, clocking in and out. So that was an option. And I think that's it for that part. Now, the communication strategy, I wrote out a communication strategy for the next 3 years, but I'm just going to discuss 23, 24. Okay, so the first thing is communication, engagement, and awareness. So since I've been here, I've tried to consistently upload information on all platforms. Social media is a big thing now. It's here and it's here to stay. We also have the Main Street, I'm calling it the Main Street Project Hub, but we've already created a website in partner with RK&K. And that will be the main hub that anyone wants to go to if they want information about what's going on with Main Street. And we also have a hotline and an email address that questions can go directly towards that. We don't have any information currently about when road closures will be, but as soon as RK&K knows, they will let us know, and we will put that on the site. And also, we will get you guys that URL address shortly, probably this week, so you can take a look at it. Next up is the website refresh. We want to create a more interactive homepage. We want it to be accessible, and we want the layout to look a little bit cleaner than it is now. Currently, we're working with VC3, and we're with them for another 4 years. We have gotten a survey from VC3, and we sent it out to the department heads. And in that survey, it asks a couple questions. How happy are you with the current website's navigation? How happy are you with the content? Is there something specific that you would like to see? What's working now and what's not working? And then how would you like the new website to look? In colorful, fun, serious, sleek, modern, high-tech, stylish, and the list goes on. And then they gave us a list of other towns' websites that we could see if we liked, and we could kind of look off of there and see what matched. And we'll also be sending you guys that survey so that you can take it and see what's on there. And then we talked about new communication platforms. Currently, our system to actually disseminate information via email is with Everbridge, and Everbridge has worked well thus far. It's free, but it's also limited. And so we talked about other platforms, and one of those platforms is Constant Contact. I've already been in contact with a representative there, and it's very affordable, and also you have the ability to do a lot of different things. You can connect it to our social platforms if we want to do that, create email invites, we can create registration links if there's an event going on in the town, so it's all under one platform. We can also do a newsletter format, so it's not so text heavy like it is now, and we can add those pictures and those visuals on there. And then also, I'm thinking of condensing the 2 emails a week to possibly 1 email. But when I looked at the analytics for the site, for the website, which also comes with the email too, that email was the least effective source. People click on it and then go right back out. But the website was actually the highest engagement. People always go to the website.
Did they put you in contact with someone local? Did you speak with someone local that specializes in Constant Contact? There is a lady here.
Oh, okay, I'm not sure, I don't think that she is local.
There is a lady that is local. She lives right down the street, and I'm happy to pass her information on.
Yes.
She's been with them for years and years and years.
Okay, yes, ma'am, thank you so much. I would like that. And the next thing we have is annual mayor's communication. The town manager and I talked about that, and that would just be a briefing of what has happened in the town in the past year with employees, events, developments, things of that sort. And that can be it will probably be primarily digital, but we can also do it in a print format if requested and or needed. And then one more thing that I did not put on there, and that is to create a plan to build stronger relationships with the neighborhood HOAs. And this will be great because the town could be more involved in meetings and activities, and we can better understand the needs of the community, and they can better understand what we will be able to provide, and that, we're actually building that relationship and listening to them and take care of those needs as we can. So that concludes my portion. Do anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. Good strategy there. Good job, I can tell you, put a lot of work in it. For the mayor's communications, a lot of towns have been doing a lot longer than I have, and Rolesville here. For example, was talking, actually last night, Carrie, one way they do annual communications is in a open forum where, it's in with some type of big group gathering, and usually those are about 35 minutes, 30 or 45 minutes. Now, what he has said that they found out, that doesn't work on digital media. You can't record that and somebody's going to watch 35 minutes. So he said that what they have learned to get the best numbers, best contact, is about 7 minutes. Is, produced about 7 minutes of video to kind of cover everything. And he says that's viewed more than, I guess that's about the magic number. And I don't know if you got any thoughts on that or not.
Yes, well, I was saying earlier, attention spans are very, very short these days. So I think it would be good to actually have the communication report or briefing in totality. If it is 30 minutes, I think that we should definitely put that up just for people to see it if they want, because there are some people that will sit and watch that. But other than that, I think it would be a good idea to split it, especially for social media, because you have a lot of our population is around my age. I've looked at the census and all of that, and when we get on social media and look at things, we want it to be short and sweet and to the point. So those highlights that you mentioned in your report or in your briefing, we can cut it down to a minute and make it a little bit more visually pleasing, and we can post that throughout, I don't know, a 3-week period or a month period, and I think that would be chef's kiss. Because even now, when I post something online, I haven't posted as many videos as I would like to, but the videos that I've posted hasn't been any longer than 2 minutes, and we've gotten a lot of engagement on those.
Right. Yeah, that's what they were kind of experiencing. If it went very long, it didn't get that much engagement as it would be. Also, I guess there's 2 ways to do it. You know, I think some of them includes a presentation type thing. Some of them don't. So, you know, that may be something to consider. I don't know if it'd be best to have a presentation or not when you're going through it or whatever. I don't know if you had thoughts on that or not.
I think now that you mentioned it, we could do it in a form of a presentation, half with visuals, half with you speaking, some B-roll footage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that terminology, but when you're talking, there may be a graphic or a short clip or a picture that goes across the screen that's in relation to what you're talking about. That way it'll just keep people's attention, rather than just sitting there listening to someone speak. So,
Right.
we could do that.
I appreciate the effort you're putting in. It's very good. We've been needing that for a while, so thank you.
For a long time. This is great. I love this. I love it, love it, love it. One thing I was going to ask, do we do anything with texting people? Are we there yet?
We're not there yet, but in the strategy that I did write up, I think it's the last year, I put in considering a town app,
I did see that.
That would be
which
great.
would be great. I just don't think that we're there yet, but as we grow in these developments, businesses come up, we're gonna have to be a lot more active, and that's easy. It's accessible to people and it's quick, so.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea.
Do you know a team that could probably start, I guess, running a trial for an app?
I would have to research that.
I find it interesting that you said on the weekly or bi-week, or you said twice a week emails that people weren't really engaging with those?
Right.
Really? I thought those were super effective.
When I looked at the chart, I should have had it to pull it up, but when I looked at the chart, more people are going to the website
Right to the website.
first, right to the website, then they'll go to social media, and then they'll go to email, but then it has a time span of how long they stay on there. So it'll say email like 30 seconds, and website a minute and a half, and then it tells you what page it goes to on the website. And that page actually is economic and development, so people are really curious about what's going on. So I think that would be great, what we have for the website for Main Street right now. People would appreciate that because it has a list of the history, a timeline of when construction starts, and then it has, of course, the contact information with the email address, phone number, hotline, and pictures and articles about recent things that's happened with that.
Gotcha. And it could also be the development community going there too, to see what's happening and what
Yes.
they want to, that they want to come here. That's good to know. Good, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Any more
I
questions?
think one, and as part of this community engagement and awareness, I think it falls on there, but you didn't really elaborate on it. But I think if you look at some of our monthly type initiatives, like this month is Black History Month, that we somehow, and I don't know if it's a weekly thing that we would do during that month or whatever. And I saw one already. I think that you may have put it out this week, if the one I saw. But those type things, I think when we're talking about community engagement and awareness is try to connect with some of the things that we're trying to promote and do, resolutions and stuff on, things like that, you know.
Well, I don't know that, I haven't seen many initiatives yearly with the town, and I think that would be something good to have. So during this time, like Black History Month, maybe having some type of recognition or an initiative that goes out that just highlights something in regards to Black history, maybe once a week minimum. And or if there is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, have an initiative for something of that sort too, because that just connects with people in their personal lives with what they're going through. And when the town recognizes something like that, then they feel like they're being heard and they feel like they're important. Ooh, didn't mean to do that.
I think,
You know, some things like Arbor Day, you
Yeah.
know, you can recognize, you know,
Right.
Arbor
And-
Day type thing, but it's so many of those that if we support with a resolution or we support, you know, as a town, maybe somehow
I
communicate.
think Lindsay and I have talked about putting together a calendar,
Right.
right? And so that all departments, and we kind of figure that out for the year. And then we can think ahead and do the connection. I agree with you, like this month would have been good to feature Lisa and DEI or
Yeah.
something like that. All
Veterans.
those kind of things would have been.
You know, veterans, it's two veterans things a
Right.
year, you know, you got memorial and veterans.
That gets that calendar, we need to kind of capture that, and then we need to think about the connections we have as a community to those things and such, so.
I like how the groundbreakings were captured on social media. I saw the first, I don't think I've ever seen a post on LinkedIn. Is that new?
Yes, I created a LinkedIn.
And it popped up immediately as you mentioned me, and I was like, oh, we're on, like, what? Go Rolesville. So I think that's important that we are on
Was
all
that-
those platforms. It was the groundbreaking
Yeah,
for
it
Main
popped- what did you
Street.
say it
She
did?
put it on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, okay.
So that was good. I think the more platforms we can use, the better.
Yeah, you have a different caliber of
Yeah.
people, a different audience with LinkedIn that becomes even more interested
Oh, yeah.
in Rolesville. So
And it touches the development community too, as well.
Yeah, it's more business oriented,
Exactly.
so, for
So that
sure.
was great. Thank you. We're not on TikTok, right? And we never will be, right?
We're not on
Okay,
TikTok.
just checking.
Yeah, I think there's been some recent rules around outlawing those in
I was
government.
totally kidding. But what about Instagram?
we're on Instagram.
We are? Okay.
Yes.
See?
We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Nextdoor.
Yeah, it shows somewhere on one of our websites or something, look at the bottom, it
The-
shows all
the
the
social
little,
icons.
the little
I've
things
never seen
on
an
it.
IG post. But anyway, I'll keep looking.
Well,
It's like
go ahead and
four
type
of
in
them,
the
I think.
town of Roseville. You'll see something.
Well, this is great. I'm excited. When I initially came onto the board, communication was a strong interest for me because I heard citizens say, you guys have secret meetings. I'm like, no, actually, they're public meetings. You can come. So it's nice that we are making an effort to be proactive. So I'm glad you're here. We're being proactive on communications. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you all for the opportunity.
Anticipate bringing back at least semi-annually, if not more frequently, to start building some metrics out on all this goal setting, so we'll do reports out to you and how we're progressing. So stay tuned this week, we'll get the website review, survey out to you, and then make sure you, please, we want your input on that. If you can, take a moment on that, and then we're gonna start doing that effort pretty quickly here, so
Will the public weigh in on that survey, or did they? And I missed
that's
that.
about it for me.
They have not. There is a survey for them, but we have not.
Haven't
released
launched
that.
it yet. Gotcha.
When did you say that the website would be live for Main Street?
It'll be live this week.
Start a rollout campaign this week.
Great.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Love it.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, we needed that.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the initial town campus planning with ADW Architects. Kelly, are you
Right.
kicking it
So
off?
Keith is here. You all remember Keith, I think. April, I don't know if you had a chance, but we're here to kind of give you a report out on your meetings, next steps, where we're going. And then also Keith brought gifts. Because I picked up one recently and I thought you would all like one. So they are to keep track of this. You can
thoughtful.
put
Thank
town campus in it and keep track of notes, all to your heart's content through the life of the town campus development in these, so thanks Keith for bringing these. You can put one in Paul's spot right there, Keith, and we'll make sure he gets, yep, good. We'll give you one town turn. Thanks.
All right. Well, good evening to everybody. Do I need to bring something up?
Yep,
Or are you
which
doing
one is it? Robin, do you know?
It's ADW there? That one? Yep, all right, perfect. There, yep. Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you in person, not just virtually. But yeah, today was really to report back, kind of, since we met in smaller groups, to kind of report back sort of the findings as an overall discussion. We also had a good meeting with the county about the library, so I'll give you a few updates on that, and just some other thoughts. You know, we talked a lot about prioritizing and all that, and dreams and fears and things like that. So just kind of go through that tonight and continue to get your feedback. Kind of just jumping right into it. So we had lots of notes from each group, and I thought it was helpful to try to boil down some of the words that jumped out to us. And so if you don't mind, on the dreams and visions, I'm just going to kind of go through them a little bit. You know, a lot of talk about connectivity, whether that's roads or walkways or bike paths, things like that. Walkability, obviously, kind of similar. Inviting. A lot of people talked about wanting this to be an inviting, non-sterile type environment. So that was definitely important. Some aesthetic comments here and there. There was one that was modern. One said collegiate. You know, so those were kind of things that they're not exclusive of each other, you know. But just a few initial thoughts in that direction. Talked about sharing of history, you know, are there opportunities on this campus to talk about the town's development and history. We had some comments about the architecture being bold and standing out, not just another place, you know, something that's special. Public gathering, we talked a lot about that specifically with the Veterans Memorial, but there's probably other opportunities for that just as a community as well. Knowing that you also have another property that's going to have some of those type events as well, but let's see, we were inviting, I think we kind of already talked about that. Community gathering, alive, flow, function, nature, you know, celebrating nature and how this is integrated, and, you know, just not, again, kind of keeps me thinking, not that sterile government center kind of place, but maybe something that's a little more dynamic and exciting in that way. And then safe was another one, you know, really just, you know, as we're going through, making sure it always felt like a safe place. So so that was kind of neat just to pull those together. I think that helps guide us a little bit when we start drawing and coming up with some ideas. Fears and concerns, you know, I think cost is always a concern. Space needs, making sure that we're meeting the needs. There's a lot of needs in really every department and building area. But also making sure we've planned for growth. So as we're master planning these buildings, we've got all this great work that's already been done about space needs. You know, some of that has been done in past years, so there's probably some growth since then, you know, that maybe that's filling up some of their projected growth. But we also need to think about the future. And so master planning on these sites, room for expansions and future phases, things like that, I think is just critical. So we hear that, we know that, it's all important. You know, some concerns about environmental issues. There's, you know, perhaps some drainage areas that we'll need to be delicate around and figure out the best way to do that. I think Zach just got here, our civil engineer, so, and landscape designer. He'll be able to really work through some of those ideas early on here and as we're planning. So anyways, with that, we talked a lot about priorities, and that really is a factor somewhat of cost. So we kind of put this here just to talk about a little bit before we start looking at sort of some of the phasing discussions we had. But, in looking at it, we aren't doing detailed cost estimates yet, but we do these building types, so we do know, an idea of what kind of costs they're coming in at this point. A lot of the estimates, some of them are older than others, but they are not super current. Things have changed. Some of them had soft costs, some of them did not. And some of you may be very aware of soft costs and some not, but they're basically all of the things besides what a contractor is paying for. So there's a lot of owner costs in a project. Furnishings, audio, video, design fees, survey fees, other things. You've done some survey work and geotech works, but there's always, there's more things like that to come. Anyway, that's usually 18 to 20%, depending on the building type. So that's a big chunk of money. And really, you need to look at the total cost. I think that's what's most relevant, not just the construction part, but the rest of it to be able to finish it. So that's one thing that as we start doing estimates together, we'll want to show you estimates for the soft costs as well. So that's important. And then just price escalations. I think you guys are probably very well aware. We've seen about 15% in each of the last 3 years. We are praying that is going to level off. But boy, it just hasn't in the last 3 years. It's just been unprecedented.
That's a total of 45%.
Yeah. It's just been hard to believe that it could continue at that pace. So hopefully that's gonna ease up. We've been saying that for the last couple of years though. But we'll hope so. But this all kind of leads us back to the phasing and aligning with the financial plan and how critical all that will be. I know the town is going to be working on a financial plan. We're going to be working on a master plan, but at the same time, we want to try to find a way to phase that master plan. And that'll kind of collide with the financial plan as we're working. So we don't see them as separate things. We see them as a together thing. The master plan will show everything, but figuring out how to move forward. All right, so it was kind of a tough thing to talk through as far as priorities, because there's no drawings in front of anybody. Everybody has needs. There were some different thoughts between the different groups about priorities. I would say in general, though, that town hall, police, and the library were all, in everybody's initial thoughts. I've separated it out a little bit so it's a little easier to consider. So in my mind, the library is being funded, except for maybe some of the infrastructure pieces, by the county. So I felt like we should just set that aside. And then the Veterans Memorial seems like a no-brainer that we can work that into this design. It's not the same kind of cost as it was one of these facilities. So I think those two are already for sures. And so I thought, then it kind of came down to police, town hall, recreation center, and fire. And we tried to indicate this is kind of rated like people's voting. It's a little misleading because a lot of the discussion was, well, town hall and police would be our first. And then we kind of tried to force the issue and say, well, can you put them in an order, for us? Just because, so it's a little misleading. You could have police showing a little higher actually in just sort of the initial thoughts. But this was sort of how the written narrative showed up. Town hall seemed to definitely garner the first place sort of priority at this point. Honestly, I would say police was sort of second. It's a little misleading, the clump of 2 and 3 there. There's a lot of discussion about, well, they're kind of almost equal to the initial. So it's a little misleading the way that's shown. I think maybe one of the surprising ones for me was the Recreation Community Center seemed to have a generally high support rate. And I know you guys had looked at a little over 16,000 square foot facility recently. So, I think that probably has something to do with that as you'd kind of gotten down the road a little ways on that. So the fire is an interesting discussion. There's definitely a need for that. However, there was a lot of discussion about that it's not incorporated at this point and that, that's a coming attraction. So, it isn't wrong, I don't think, that a couple people felt like that was a very high priority too. It's just, how that falls in with everything else, is still kind of to be determined a little bit. So in our mind, the town hall and police and community center all rated pretty high, but town hall and police kind of were the sort of the two highest overall. I thought it might be helpful, we're not getting into specific numbers, but just to kind of show a percentage of cost. This was based off of your square footages that were done in your program, so, and the kind of cost per square foot we're seeing for these project types. It helped us kind of get a scale, what some of these were. Fire station costs are very high, and it was a pretty large square footage that was shown. Police, we use the program there. Police town hall, they're pretty much tracking about the same overall cost range. And then the community center, recreation center, that's based on that 16,000 square foot size project you had. Some of the programming there from that I was reviewing had some even bigger ones. This is not based on that. It is based on what you guys were getting pretty close to. That obviously could get a lot bigger if it was much bigger square footage. But I thought it might be helpful just to see this, and also the soft costs. You can see about the percentage of the overall cost that is. So it is an important number for us to keep track of.
There's no dollar numbers in there then?
Don't have them in here. No, I have thoughts about them, but we thought we'd wait till we got a little further into the master plan before we dial that in. And the cost per square foot are for standalone projects, really. So with the infrastructure on this campus, that will take the site costs kind of out of the buildings, and it'll be distributed a little differently. So, but I just thought you might find that interesting, just to kind of see where those things fell. Just to give you a summary, there was lots and lots of notes from the library meeting. It was very productive, though. They are looking at a little bit larger library than they would typically put in a town this size at this point. But I think that's probably, and with projection of your growth, that is going to, it sounds like, be unprecedented, really. So they're looking at about a 12,000 square foot library, which would have 40 to 60,000 books. They would have computer access and technology that would be available for the community to use. I think that's a large trending component to libraries. They thought they would need up to 90 parking spaces. So it is a lot. And they'll have, so it isn't that some of those couldn't be shared, depending on how it's located and where. But there'll be peak times, like when school children get out of school, and there were just some different peak times. Recreation centers have the same kind of thing. They have some interesting peak times. They did really ask for sort of a front public side and then sort of a back staff side. They deliver books and they rotate books a lot, wanting a little bit of kind of break space outside in the back, so to speak, away from customers, maybe, if you think of them that way, or citizens that are there. So they weren't as excited about the library being like right up on the road. So so they would have sort of that front of house and back of house. So as we're working on the master plan, that's something good to know. Funding, assuming their process works properly and it goes, they said it was their highest priority on libraries for the county. So construction would start in 2026, assuming everything goes properly with that. And they have a work session in August that we were tentatively thinking that might be a good target to be able to share updates with them on. So.
And this is coming from their staff?
This is coming, from the county staff. Yep. So their facilities folks that handle their library works. And they had their architect that'll be designing the facility. They'd already had meetings with the library kind of division or group there. So they were reporting back to us basically with those findings. That's how they got to that 12,000 square foot size and some of those numbers. So
They do have a public art component. They make that list, but they do have a public art component. Mm-hmm. Not a dollar amount per se, But they always like to incorporate art into the project, which I think.
Yeah, I
would
know
be-
some of the commissioners have talked about a historical piece to it too.
And then they also said that could be worked in through the Veterans Memorial too, potentially, too. So,
Historical,
no, the art
oh,
component.
the historical into the art or something.
The art could be worked
Because
into.
I want to make sure I understand, because if there's a disconnect between the staff and the commissioners, I want to give them feedback on
They
that.
didn't talk about the historical piece. I asked specifically, could the art component help towards the Veterans Memorial? And they said yes.
But they didn't talk about the historical
They
piece.
did not talk about much. Did they talk much about historical piece?
No, matter of fact, I kind of asked them, just seeing some of their recent libraries that I've seen designed. I mean, they've been nice. They're contemporary, but they have nice wood elements, and they don't feel cold like contemporary. And so I just asked, is that, do you have a certain style that you will design, or will you integrate with what we come up with? And they're very flexible about that, so there's not any kind of specific direction they have right at this moment, so. I think it was a good interaction. It was good to have their architect on board there too, so I think as we move forward, we can continue to have those discussions and start to blend the architecture so it all feels cohesive, so, yeah. It was a good meeting.
Interesting that they want to be off the road. When
Yeah,
I think of city libraries, I think of close to the road, but I have seen the designs here in Wake County. I'm thinking of the one specifically in Wake Forest. The latest one they built is very modern and is very much off the road,
yeah.
but it's very high-tech, very modern.
Morrisville's kind of on a road, but it has 3 other sides, so
Right.
that must service, it's a little smaller, I think, than this one will be too.
Just interesting.
So, yeah, I guess there's a little more of a delivery component to it than I would have expected, so that's probably a good thing, so. But yeah, that was interesting, good to know. So I guess just kind of in summary, and we can go back and have any discussion on any of this we want, is, trying to think about the priorities. Again, we're going to work on an overall master plan. It's going to show everything that we can fit on this site properly and functionally how it works, room for those expansions and all, but I think town hall, police, fire, leaving room for fire, maybe. Fire stations are very specific, and where you locate those, they are in a hurry with a big truck. So, yeah, being on access out to the road where kids aren't going to run in front of it, things like that are something to think about. So we do lots of fire stations, so we'll look at opportunities where it might be the safest place for that. But as we're also looking at, these other spaces here. So our next steps are to start doing what we find to be the really fun stuff, is to start drawing things. And so we'll come up, Zach and our team will work together and come up with several options on the master plan. There'll be pros and cons kind of to each of them. We'll probably knock some out before we even get back to you guys, but we'll bring several options to you and talk about why we think that works good and what, how we might lay out the site. Also, some initial thoughts about phasing would be important. We'll be reviewing that with the town and stuff before we meet with you next. We'll work on cost estimates. That will be important in the phasing discussion. And really, as you're working with the finance folks, I think they'll need some ideas of the costs that you might be looking at. Like I mentioned, we'll continue to coordinate with the county on the library and all that. Any revisions we need, all that, but then we'll be back here to present some exciting master plans for you to look at. So I mean, that's really what's ahead. We're excited about that. Any questions about all this?
Let me ask Keith, let me ask the board before they get into specific questions. Where do you all want to be in these next steps? Do you want to see all the options? Do you want to see some options? What level of time and work do you want to spend on this?
I would definitely love to see the drawings. especially with all of us meeting with you as far as in how you're gonna locate everything. And I do agree with what you were saying as far as in the FD being off the road compared to the PD, could be next to the town hall, and then the Veterans Memorial near the library. So all of those. But I do have a question for you. As far as in the projects that you guys has done in last year, do you see a price difference for this year?
Yeah, we've still seen an increase. It's still been going up. We have, actually, we have a bid in Sanford on a fire station on Thursday. So we're actually anxious to see the result of that, to see if there's any leveling on that one. So that'll be a good test. We've had a fire station in Charlotte bid. That is not a good one to compare with. They did everything expensive you could do. So that one's an anomaly. That was a couple of weeks ago. And it was a little higher than we had estimated, but we had quite a bit of contingency through the design process, and it still was a little higher. So, yeah, it's tracking about 1% per month right at the moment. So that's a little less than 15, but that's still 12. So it's.
So are you seeing bid engagement improving from a standpoint of number of bidders you get, or that's been pretty consistent all along on your projects? Or?
We've been on our design, bid, build type projects where it's just you put out the drawings to bid. You're not working with the contractor before or anything like that. We have been like trying to be exceedingly generous in bid time, 5, even 6 weeks. We've come up with some creative ways to help reduce their risk during the bid. Like there might be an allowance if there's some escalations in the first 60 days only. Some things like that we have driven up the participation because it's taking a little bit of the fear factor out. It's a difficult time to bid projects, I think. So.
Is that just because of cost?
No, it's availability, staffing. I mean, there's like
Staffing.
layers of issues. And like the supply chain has been a huge problem. We'll go 1 month, it'll be the generators that are the problem. Then the next month, the roofing's a problem. Then the next month, concrete pipe underground is a problem. And it's just, they can't get it. They can't get it for 52 weeks, you know? And so that's a risk for them, especially if we have any like damages for every day over there, you know. So we've been allowing longer construction times than we normally would. We've basically been trying to reduce their risk.
But wouldn't you
honestly.
build that into the contract to say, I mean, if it's beyond their control, you really can't hold that against them?
Yeah, there's some,
Right.
but I mean, you got a contract too, right? So
Right, but if it's extenuating, they can't get it, they can't get it. That's not their fault. That's not
we've-
something they did.
We've ended up having to be pretty flexible and look at other materials and say, yeah,
Yeah.
that'll work.
Definitely.
It's not our first 3 choices, but it's
Right.
it's all you can get. Yeah,
Right.
so we've been trying to work with them. So on the bidding like that, by doing those things, it's made it, I think it's a good solution. It's fair, kind of fair to everybody. It takes a little longer and it is still more expensive. We've been doing a lot of the construction manager at risk projects lately too, where they come on board during the schematic design and they're involved. They might even order stuff early because they're hired like your architect would be hired. Qualifications based, it's all open book. But that has worked pretty good with some of these lead item issues. They can order the mechanical units, like, you know, before we get everything permitted even,
Right.
so, yeah, so that helps.
I just want to respond to Kelly's question about what we want to see. I like pictures, I like detail, I like to see the options. And I'm interested because I wasn't thinking the fire department, although we talked about it, the fire department right on the campus. I'd love to see examples of that somewhere. Because I can't picture that in my head. And I'm thinking of other cities here in the county, maybe if someone knows of someplace. I don't know where that's incorporated.
Well, we
Police
may do-
departments are typically,
We'll probably have some options with it on there and some without it.
yeah.
You know, it may be that we can't fit everything on there too,
Right.
so, you know, we'll just have to
Have to
see how
see.
it goes. We know the core things that have been studied before clearly fit on there, plus probably
Right.
something else.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, we'll just look at options there. Yeah, see what the best, highest use of your land is and And then,
I do like the idea. I know when we initially did I think it was the Main Street, there was a charrette, I guess was the word, and they showed kind of different options. I'm not saying we do that, but it's nice to be able to come down to kind of a couple of things and say, hey, or these are 1, 2, 3 that we're considering, and maybe get some input. But I would like to see that level of detail. What I don't want to see is one design.
No.
Here you go. Here's the cost. Like, what are our other options, right? Yeah. So it sounds
Yeah,
like you're gonna
we'll
check
bring probably 3 options.
Good.
If Jim was here tonight, Jim's doing a room at the inn thing with his church tonight, so he wasn't able to come. But Jim would bring 16 options. And then what I have learned is that is not good.
Yeah, that's maybe too much.
That is too many. So usually like 3 is a good number with 3 different variety things to look at. Is what I usually recommend.
Makes
So.
sense, yeah.
Would that be 3 with the fire department and 3 without, so a total of 6? Just checking,
Moving towards Jim's options.
because it's
I don't know yet.
to be considered.
We haven't started drawing yet. Let us draw a little bit and we'll see how it's going.
I just like to see examples of where it's being done, where it's working, where it's like, oh, that's neat. I didn't think of it that way. Because a lot of times, if you haven't seen it, you may not be able to imagine it. Like our model homes. There's model homes for a reason, because you can't imagine. I can put that in that space and you go, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Fire stations can be a very attractive streetscape to a town. A lot of the projects we do, that's one of the reasons that we're hired is that we do
Right.
stations that are a little richer maybe than in some places, and
Gotcha.
it adds to that whole.
So let me ask a question of the board, because maybe this is just a question for me. So is there a plan to tear down the fire station eventually?
Are you asking the board or, so there is a
The
report.
board, the staff, anybody who wants to give me input?
Yeah, there was a report that was distributed, I believe you all got it, and
Mm-hmm.
it talked about the deficiencies of the existing station, and it talked about the difficulties of upgrading that existing facility, and it recommended a new facility somewhere,
Gotcha.
and that site where it exists now could be too small
Gotcha.
for a modern-day
So
station.
the reason I'm asking is we don't have a lot of historical buildings. So before we go bulldoze buildings, if it could be used for other things, I just want us to think about that. Because we do not have a lot of historic preservation in Rolesville because of the fire. Just saying, if it's loaded with asbestos, that's a different topic, but
It is, I think it was a pre-engineered metal building, so I don't know from a historic standpoint that it would.
Yeah, the original building had kind of what you see today. They've added on a little bit of brick
probably
to
been
it, but,
added.
and then one bay. So they've added all those bays on.
It's probably been added onto for
there's
many
no
years,
really
multiple
original
times.
there's none of the original
Yeah,
really
it's
left.
some.
It's a little
Yeah, it's
bit.
mostly on this end, I think.
Gotcha.
Where the brick entrances?
Yeah, where you
So,
go in the front door.
What I'm thinking about, if you all are familiar with the train station in downtown Raleigh, how they took some of the old pieces and they incorporated it into I love that. Our train station looks way better than Charlotte's. And I'm saying that on camera. Charlotte's is trash. But anyway, they really did think about it and they kept those metals and different things. So when you go, you get this unique experience, not just a train station. So that's what I'm thinking about when I say don't just
Sure.
bulldoze it, maybe something you can incorporate.
We did, in Greensboro, we did 2 stations at once, but one of them was replacing kind of their, was their busiest fire station that most everybody had gone through at some point. So it had a lot of sentimental value, even though it desperately needed to be replaced. But we ended up saving, it had like a glazed greenish tile inside the bays
Oh.
that was popular in the 60s or 50s when it was built. And so we actually saved those and put those into the brick accents out front of the bays and lit it. So those are on there.
Oh, wow.
We kept a bunch of the brick and used it in some of the pavers around the entryway. Some kind of cool signage they had. They had, you know, a lot of the departments will have like logos that are special to them.
And those are things that draw people to your town because it's something unique about it, right? Versus just a brand-new building that doesn't have. Cooper's downtown Raleigh, they took their old kind of insides, they still have the benches from 1930, I believe, or 20, and they incorporate it into this modern building. So when you walk in, it's like you're walking back in time. So anyway, just
Yeah.
throwing it out there.
No, that would be good.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
one of the things
I haven't toured that building, I've just looked at the report, and yeah, they
One
were,
of the things, some of the fire board, they like to have a museum one day.
Yeah.
So,
And that building could be it.
you could keep some of the building, some of the historical piece of the building and put the old truck in there and make like a fire museum. out
we
of
we
it.
did that on Kernersville, we did their station, and we did their lobby, so they have a 1923 American LaFrance truck that's nicely restored.
Wow.
So it's in there, and they actually use it on parade days, so we designed the front doors to be able to get it in and out, but they look like the bay doors on the building, even though they're smaller
Is that a new
scale.
building or old building?
It's a newer building, yeah.
Yeah, see, they was talking about keeping some of the old building for a museum. And then that would be downtown too, or down in there.
I
so.
like it. Sorry, I didn't mean to take us
No,
down the
there's
path, but I just
I
want to
can
get the
nerd out on fire station
concept.
stuff all day long.
Well, and just a plug, I found out yesterday, June 3rd of this year,
Yes, sir.
they're celebrating 65 years, so you'll be invited to an event.
The what?
But June 3rd will be 65 years of a Roseville Fire Department.
Oh, okay, yeah.
2:30 PM.
And it's 65 years to the day,
Wow,
June 3rd.
Very cool.
that's cool.
Well, any other questions for me today? We'll have, like I said, the next time we meet, when we have drawings, it'll be even more
I do think you
exciting.
need to kind of, Keith mentioned pricing, but we're looking at least double of what we have in any of our plans, if not more.
You said double.
Double of what we already had kind of 6 years ago, thought, if not more. And so
That's
just
probably
kind
right,
of,
yeah.
just keep that in mind a little bit. We didn't put numbers in there. We talked about it. I said, I don't know if we're ready for that yet, but he didn't want me to fall over too far.
Yeah.
But it's going to be beyond what we have for 3 buildings in one, for one right now, probably. So it's going to be a number.
I mean, it looks like, if you assume the recreation community building is $8 million, then, the
Right.
rest of them is in the 10s to 12, looks like, so,
And the police were 5 million, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago?
yeah, it was.
6 or 7 now.
And
yeah.
some of those did not have the soft costs in
Right.
those numbers that I could see, so. But we'll work together on all that. And that's why the phasing will be important then, it's the second kind of piece to it.
Yeah, so what is a square foot? It used to be 200, then it's 400. Is it more than 400 now, basically, for a building of these types?
So the fire stations are the highest, so they are, and your study said between 500 and 600 a square foot, so that is actually still pretty accurate, plus soft costs though, those weren't in there. Police stations are a little less expensive typically. We had, I think we were looking at 25,000 square feet on the police station. That included like a 5-year projection, but it's probably, we're there probably, I'm assuming. So that, I was using that. I had that at about 510 a foot. Again, this is if you were doing site and that all together. So with the whole campus design, it'll be a little different the way we'll estimate it, because we'll pull the site pieces out differently. Town hall, 2-story, 20,000 square feet from the study. That's kind of what seemed like a good place to go. When you do 2 stories, it's hard to get it too much smaller, as your first piece. But then leaving room for expansions and stuff down the road. And then the rec center was 16.5 in that kind of first go at it that you were
Our
looking
town
at.
hall is what size?
20,000 square feet, so it'd be
What's Garner? Do you know? I know you.
20, yeah, I did Garner, so that was 24 or 26.
It's a little bigger than
It's
it's
a little bigger, yeah.
20% bigger probably.
But kind of scale-wise similar. 20,000 would be a similar scale, 2-story. You get much smaller than that, at 2-story starts feeling kind of strange, and you can do things like shell out second floor if you didn't need it all at the beginning, or, some other things we could
They
look
got
at
a lot
too.
of open space in there.
Garner is 26.6.
Yeah.
It's a lot of open space when you walk in, if I recall, stairway and all
It
that.
is a lot of volume, but it's not a lot of square footage. That's actually one of my favorite parts of the design, is that it has this grand civic scale to it, But if you think about the actual footprint of that open space on the lower level, it's not a very big area, but the glass makes it feel
Feel
very large. And then the way the balcony, kind of balcony before the stairs upstairs looks out at that, it feels much bigger than maybe, that square footage is. Where like, I've toured Apex, for example, and they have that huge area in the center, right? So it has that grand scale without being so much square footage, maybe not
Apex
that
don't
grand,
look
but.
efficient to me, and I hate to say it, I know people watching, but
Well,
it's
it has a grand civic scale, but there's a big square footage and cost component to doing that. So that was what, I felt like the Garner one was pretty successful in getting that feel for a good budget and everything. So there's little tricks and things we can do like that.
And the
give it
Garner
that.
one has a traditional and a modern feel to me from the outside.
Yeah, it's definitely what I would call transitional. So
I like
we,
that.
we see that, and it's got kind of a modern glass corner, but yeah, it's still's got the nice brick detailing and.
And how much was, so right now you have a wax saw project, right? So similar size community, a few thousand bigger. How much square footage was that? What was their price?
So that one's about, I think we're at 20, maybe that was the 24,000 square foot one. And the price on that is a little hard to tell because we bid 2 buildings and the campus all at once, and they didn't have them break that out.
What was the total cost for the projects?
I think we were at about 13 million, and that was pretty good pricing, even though it was going up and up and up as we were going. But they have a pre-engineered building sort of on the back of the campus that's Parks and Rec and Public Services, kind of Public Works type space. That's part of it, and then the overall campus development, and then the town hall sort of up on the corner. And it's the same thing. It's sort of got some traditional elements and some modern elements. It's got some cool wood features that are very modern looking up on the corner, but then it's also got really nice brick detailing, and
Where's that?
that's in Waxhaw. So
Very similar to Rolesville. We're about 5 years behind them.
But you all did not do the one that's next to Concord. You did Concord, right?
we did Concord,
Not the other one, the other city.
not Kannapolis.
Not Kannapolis.
They were going on at the same time. They have an intense rivalry, I'll say that.
Y'all Google Kannapolis Town Hall. Just Google it.
So it was interesting. There again, I think we were really efficient in the plan and gave them some really cool civic scale spaces, but not using so much
Yeah, they use a
grandeur
lot
and
of
money
space,
to do
yeah.
it. We were, and it was great because, again, like I said, they're very competitive. They were way underway before we even got started. They started construction while we were still designing, and we ended up getting into their building before they did, so they were very happy.
So Keith, do you think you have enough from the board to go do 3 to 5 options and have that ready? I think we talked about maybe June-ish, is that right? Is what we kind of talked about, or thereabouts? And then
Yeah, for sure.
that'll be your look. And then what we'll do during the summer is start taking that and talking about cost and phasing. So once you pick your favorite option, we'll put on the costs, and that'll determine the phasing and
And
how
we'll,
we're going to proceed.
and we're planning to do, once we kind of narrow it down to the direction you guys really like, we're going to do 3D modeling and fly around animations, and we may even get a little bit into the architecture.
That's cool.
So, yeah, that'll get everybody excited about spending money. So, helps to have the eye candy to go with it a little bit, so. But, yeah, that'll help generate the excitement and movement, more than just a 2D plan, so.
And you know all about the roads, right? Potential roads and access to the site and such like that.
Yeah, and the neighborhoods and all that, so.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Time for us to roll up our
They've been
sleeves and start
studying all the
drawing.
development plans in front of you and such like that, so they're well aware of all the possible other items associated with this, so.
Yeah, we're super excited to start drawing and get going, so.
And isn't one of our first steps eventually, after we adopt a plan, probably annexation and start zoning and so on and so forth, right? So you still have to zone it, you still have to annex it all fully, all those steps too, so down the line.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
have a good evening.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Keith.
You're welcome.
All right. We good? Yeah.
That's gonna happen.
We good for a break, or you guys want to continue?
I think we're good.
All right, let's continue. Discussion of town hall possible capital, or town board possible capital improvement. Amy and Kelly, I think y'all want to tag
Sure,
team
I
that
think
maybe?
Amy's worked through this pretty well and has done some good slides and some thoughts. I think what we heard from you is that you would kind of like to take this moment to make sure that you kind of have, get in alignment with what you're thinking are your priorities as other items. We just spent some time on some big items, but there are other things too. And we, you know, we're into our budget development now. We're about a month plus out from our full-on budget retreat. But if you have some items that we haven't thought of, or initiatives or thoughts, we want to hear those tonight so we can work through those in time for the March 28th discussion too. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let you know what we're thinking about right now a little bit, and then hopefully stimulate some conversation with you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. So tonight, as we talked about, we're going to talk about some potential updates to that capital improvement plan, or sometimes we'll refer to it in the shorthand, CIP. So tonight, kind of want to talk about this in two parts. Most of what we're going to talk about is part one, which Kelly just talked about, the updates to the CIP, but we'll hold a little bit of time at the end for part two, which is just a little taste, an appetizer, so to speak, of some things we're talking about with the operating budget. So what you see on the screen now should look familiar to you. You spent about 12 months working in conjunction with the financial advisors at Davenport to come up with this 5-year capital improvement plan. So this represents the final plan that you adopted in, well, with last year's budget, but pretty much it was solidified around February of 2022. So it's about a year old. Again, what this plan represents is what I like to call the ABCs of your budget. It's the asphalt, bricks, and concrete. We'd probably add D on there for dirt. But what we're looking at here are those large capital projects, things that go for multiple years, usually multiple millions of dollars, or at least multiple hundreds of dollars. Okay, so these are the big ticket items. And because they're such big ticket items, it's really important that we plan for those over the long term. So that's what drives this 5-year horizon. So what you worked with Davenport was to look at these projects, and you examined how these projects would affect your key debt ratios, which are what's shown at the very bottom of this chart, things like a 10-year payout ratio, debt service to expenditures, those types of things, those key debt service ratios. And then they also examined the debt affordability for these projects as well. So now what happens, here we are, 12 months past the last adoption of this. What that means is that this is an ever-evolving plan, right? Because the first year of this plan was adopted in your budget from, well, not quite a year ago. And we're getting ready to add another year onto the end of it. So just briefly, let's talk about the things in that first column that are in your current budget. Because obviously we make plans, things don't always work out that way. Public Works facility was on here for $3 million. By the time we finished out that project, the project budget you've adopted is actually $4.6 million for that project. And that project is underway. Rogers Willoughby came in pretty close. Your final budget for that was $420,000. We're still working on that one, so we'll see where that one ends up once we get to the bid phase.
So will that be done by the end of this year then, or
Should be bid.
July 1?
It should be bid.
Huh?
We should have a bid, and we should have it
It
hopefully.
won't be, it won't hit this year?
Probably not. We have one more DOT permit we're going to be receiving, and then we're ready to go to bid. And Eric and I talked about it yesterday, and probably mid to late summer will be under construction.
So it'll be started, I heard you say. But
I hope it's, you said this year. I was looking
Yeah.
fiscal year.
The construction was this year, right?
This fiscal year, right. It probably won't be, we'll probably have a number by the end of this fiscal year. It won't be constructed by the end of fiscal year.
So what I think I heard you say
Yeah,
is it will start construction next fiscal year.
that's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm clear. Thank you.
And then the third project that you have budgeted in this current budget is the community center. The final budget that was adopted for that was $7.9 million. That was $400,000 from your park impact fees, and it was anticipating $7.5 million of debt service. So when this was adopted a year ago, there were two things we made note of, okay? And one of those is time, that over time, priorities change, plans change, as we heard, costs change. And so it's important to make sure that we look at this plan every year and make any needed updates. The second thing that was noted on that plan when it was adopted was that there was an observation that it was a little light, perhaps, on some smaller park projects that we might be able to work into that plan. So some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, we're trying to address these two items that you have mentioned that we need an update for. So let's take just a step back and let's talk about what it is that drives projects onto this capital improvement plan. So these are the things that we looked at as we were going through and coming up with some potential updates for you to consider. First and foremost, we want to make sure that whatever projects are on this plan are consistent with your strategic plan for the community. That's true wherever it comes from, whether it's staff, your advisory boards, or other sources. We want to make sure that we're fulfilling your vision for this community. In addition to the strategic plan, you have some other plans out there that you use to guide your work and the work of staff. For instance, you just recently adopted a greenway plan for the community. There is a bicycle plan for the community. We have a community transportation plan that may inform some of the longer-term projects on your CIP. We also work on something called a pavement condition index. So we do go out and have a contractor go out and survey the town streets to see which existing streets need to be resurfaced. Because as this chart would show you, if we really dug into it, what it shows you is that the longer you wait, the more expensive it becomes to rehabilitate a road. So you want to keep them in shape early and find just that right point where you want to do the resurfacing to make it the most cost-efficient use of your tax dollars. So we look at that pavement condition index. That drives some projects. And you also have adopted an ADA transition plan, where we have a consultant who has come and looked at all of our facilities and made recommendations about how do we make our facilities more accessible for all users. And then finally, there may be some contractual agreements. Maybe there's agreements with developers or fees in lieu, some portions of projects that the town has said, we will take the responsibility for building that part of that improvement. And so that can also drive projects on the CIP.
Can I clarify that?
Certainly.
You just said fees in lieu.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we didn't do that anymore.
So the one that's always top of my mind is Barrington, that Granite Falls Boulevard, that section there. The town received a fee in lieu and took the responsibility to build that section of road. So that's an example of where that. So there's still some things out there like that.
Did we do that for Rogers Road?
Yeah,
Willoughby?
Willoughby.
That's
the last one, though.
Yeah, that's a little creepy because you can't control cost and you commit to today's dollars and then down the road we're messed up. All right, just wanted to note that fee in lieu is not a good deal most of the time. Thanks, Amy.
Okay, so as I mentioned, everything we do, we want to be consistent with the strategic plan. So on this next slide, what we want to do is sort of talk through. What I have done is picked out certain of our goals, and we're going to place out these projects according to some of these goals in your strategic plan. Goal 8 is a very important part of the CIP because it's all about infrastructure and of all kinds of infrastructure. So I've actually got it on here twice. One is to look at the new construction associated with infrastructure, but then there's also an important maintenance piece of maintaining the infrastructure that you have now. So that's why it's on there twice. Goal 6 is talking about recreation, expanding active recreation. Goal 1, a diverse mix of opportunities for recreation. 5 is about enhancing appearance, and then 14, adequate facilities. So this first column talks about the projects that we have going on right now, okay? So the East Young Street sidewalk, the pedestrian improvements, so close to being done. Rogers Willoughby, we've talked about. Crack seal program, that's this year's version of that pavement conditioning index for the resurfacing program. We've replaced, I believe it's already completed, we've replaced the lights at Field C on Redford Place Park. We're in progress on the farm, activating the entrance for that facility. Public Works facilities underway, and you just heard ADW's presentation on the master plan. So all of these are projects that are currently funded and going on right now. This next column harkens back to the first slide I showed you, which was this plan. Everything that's in this column is on this plan. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each one, but everything here is represented on this plan. BMR, Burlington Mills Road. Sorry, I have a lot of acronyms in there. So what we want to talk about tonight is this last column, which are some potential additions to this
Before you go
CIP
there,
model.
I think I sent you email on it. You know, looks like in these two columns, the community center that we had in the budget for 7.9 million that was approved by this board to go ahead and fund that this year is missing. It's not on, it's not on ongoing now nor planned in the model, but it was planned in the model, right?
It's at the
Right.
very bottom.
It is at the very bottom. So even though it was budgeted in this year, because that project sort of got a retake on it, so I just moved it over to the planned
Yeah,
in the model.
but what, I guess what I'm saying is the money,
Fiscal year.
where's the money? I mean, in other words, this board worked very hard in trying to approve that. We went to, the league and it got approved. You got the funding in the budget by the capital guys, to pay for it. So how do we not lose that traction? In other words, it just vanishes. How do we keep it from vanishing? I'm not sure if we use 8 million for that building, or we may use 8 million for another building, or we may use it. How do we keep it from just vanishing? Like it looks like it's vanished. It may not have, but it looks like it's vanished.
Yeah, well, and this may tie in a little bit to the conversation we just had with ADW, because they do still have a community center as part of that program, at least for where I saw. It looked like that was part of the conversation to make sure that we're considering a community center in terms of that prioritizing for the facilities. As far as the funding goes, the substantial bulk of that funding was anticipated to be debt service. So until you actually go to the LGC to get that debt approved, it's really just sort of, it's funding on paper.
Right.
So there's not
It is.
actual.
It's funding on paper, but it's funding that you told us we would be able to do.
Right, so, yes.
So
yes,
I don't want next year to say, the $8 million is gone and we don't have it no more. We can't do the debt service no more. We can't do this stuff no more. How do we preserve that we have an $8 million budget item that this board can decide on what to spend on that will not just vanish out of the CIP, just.
Sure, I think I see what you're saying. And I think that's going to come in when we, so right now what we want to do is have some conversation about priorities, right? Do we need to revisit what priority order things are in? And then what we want to do is bring the Davenport folks back in. right? And so if we had room in that model before to be able to afford debt service on 7.5 million, that capacity, assuming all other things are the same, that capacity should still be there and perhaps available for something else or continued available for a similar facility.
Yeah, and I think what I'm saying, and I believe the board may be saying, be comfortable with, is we see that somewhere in the CIP, and don't call it a community building, you just call it a building or something. But we've already have that within our CIP today that I don't feel like I want to lose. I mean, I don't feel like I want it to vanish.
Right, because that's more money that can go towards the farm.
It could.
It's not merely money, though, it's debt capacity.
Capacity, yeah.
So it's not, it's like an open credit card, right, is what we designate.
But you got to be
really.
able to pay off that debt thing, and that's what,
Right, but I'm
that's what he
saying-
does in these CIPs.
Right,
is
I'm
to
saying,
show-
so she's designated it on paper, right? That doesn't mean the capacity to do it goes away, but we don't have those actual dollars in the
Right.
budget.
Right.
Am I understanding
Right,
that
I
correct?
think it does represent debt capacity, is
Right.
perhaps a good way. So that debt capacity, again, all things being equal, that debt capacity should still be there, right? Now, you may have some other factors. For example, the Public Works building, we originally anticipated $3 million of debt, and we had to go a little more than that. I think it was 4.4 million we actually took out. So, but at the same time, you also probably got a higher property valuation than what was anticipated in the model. And so that may be offset overall. But that's why we really need to, after we get the prioritization down, to bring back those folks from Davenport, update our model, and then we'll see where you want that debt capacity prioritized.
But I
Yeah,
see your point. I see
I've
what
been
you're
here a
saying.
long time.
Yeah, I know exactly what
And,
you're
you
saying.
know, and this board worked very hard, and you worked very hard to get that in the CIP, and I don't want that to be lost, you know.
Right.
You know, in other words, that's one building that's behind us, I think, from a standpoint of being able to afford, is that a good word for it? That I don't want us to lose by remodeling something or hiring, you know, staff or doing something that would lose that.
It gets absorbed somewhere else.
Yeah.
So is
So
that
if-
designated just for community center?
I'm sorry, I missed the
Can be
beginning.
designated for any item now? It doesn't have to be specific?
It's just in the CIP as a,
Right, it's in the CIP.
So should it be
You-
for a community center or it can be for anything in the CIP?
Yeah, so you did adopt a capital project ordinance for that facility, right? So if you, getting a little bit in the weeds, but if you do want to use that capacity for some other project, we may need to do some cleanup, right? Where you defund that and you put that capacity towards a different project,
But is that-
for example.
That just like something I thought we were gonna do. I thought it was designated for that project.
Is your mic on?
I-
Because I can hardly hear you.
I'm sorry, it went off. It was.
There we go.
It was.
So I was saying that if it's designated for that project, shouldn't it stay there and not be absorbed someplace else where it may be needed?
Well, let's
that's what
go.
we're trying to say it will
Right,
be.
but
It will
let's-
be used for something.
But let's go back to this model, right? And we've talked about the key debt indicators that are at the bottom of this chart. And it's very small print, and I apologize. But if you'll notice that bottom one, the debt service to expenditures, it does start getting a little concerning around year 3 of your model. So again, this is where we need that update from Davenport to see if costs are going up on some other projects, how do all these things play together? Right? And at what point do you really get concerned about maybe this debt service to expenditure ratio? Or perhaps it's better than it was when we projected this a year ago.
But you mentioned priority. So when I look at this chart, I see the community center listed there, right? That's the building you're referring to?
This year, for this
Right,
year.
for this fiscal year.
Which we know it's not going to happen.
Right, but the work that the architects were just talking about, if we're putting some of that funding towards that, because I'm sure they're not doing it for free, right? Isn't that incorporating some of those dollars for the design, all of that? Or is that different?
Funded other revenue.
Or is that different?
Yeah, we funded a different line item for that.
Say that one more time.
We funded it through a different way,
A different way.
not in
Agree
this.
with you. I
So
know how it
there's money,
disappears.
there's money,
I got you. I know what
you
you're
know,
saying.
Allocated for it already.
it's just like, you allocate money to buy a car and you didn't buy one this year. So
Money didn't
if you don't keep up with it, you could spend all your money, you won't be able to buy one next year.
Right.
I guess that's
Well,
what,
and I guess where
Debt capacity.
I know, I hear what you're saying, right? Because, and I'll just speak plainly, we don't want the operating needs of the.
Absorb that money.
To
that
absorb things
capacity.
that we have set aside for the capital program.
that's right. That's basically.
Right? I mean, that's essentially what we're getting
That's
to.
basically what we're saying.
And so I hear that. I will also tell you, if I remember the model correctly a year ago, is some of the way that they were paying the debt service for the community center was to use some of that reserve we've built up over time, right? So it wasn't active revenue streams that was using it. It was some of the money we have built up in fund balance that was going to help pay off that debt service. It was leveraging savings in order to use to get something larger.
Right.
But I think the key takeaway is there's not, I think we got to the point where make sure, staff, you keep that 8 million plus reserved
Right.
for capital purposes
Right. So
and not use it for other reasons. And make sure you show that when we come back and have this conversation
So
about this.
what Amy started with is very important that we understand what she's saying. In the last 12 months, things have changed a lot, right? I mean, you told us that.
Yeah.
You got to be, got to be ready for that. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 12 months. And what I'm saying is if opportunity in the next 12 months to build a community center, I don't want us to say, well, we don't have 8 million no more. Correct. That's kind of what I say. Or are we going to leverage to build the park if that's what they choose to do? We can't say, well, we don't have that no more. I don't want to say we can't have, because you work very hard to come up with something that, we can do for the community, if that makes sense.
But I hear what you're saying. I understand completely what you mean. But there are competing priorities. And so when we did that exercise with the ADW, we had all of those things, almost all of them were a priority. So realistically, we have to kind of draw the line and say, okay, this is what we're going to focus on, because that's how you get your funding to go ahead and move forward. And I think we're not there yet.
I mean, it could go to the town hall,
Oh, yeah.
but I don't want to lose the 8 million that we've got
You
working.
don't want to lose the capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Because I think, too, some of what will come in with our conversation with Davenport is we want to think strategically, long-term, right, about what method we use for debt funding. For example, GO bonds are typically fairly well-received when they're used for recreation-type things, for streets. They typically are not as well-received for town halls, right? So I think that's some of what they'll talk to us about as well, is thinking strategically, long-term, how we do this debt financing. Yep. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. I know exactly what you're saying. And we've seen that happen many times before.
Yep.
It's absorbed.
Okay, so again, this column represents what's on there now. So what we'd like to talk about is some potential additions or amendments to the model. Several of these, again, are in response to that concern that was brought up a year ago about smaller parks projects. So that's what you'll see here. But again, done with the idea of being able to address multiple goals that are in your strategic plan. So the first one on here is the Granite Acres Greenway. This is the one that is a multi-use path to connect Granite Acres area to Sanford Creek Elementary. I think I'm saying that right. Yep, Granite Falls Boulevard near the elementary school. We have engineering. You approved some funds for engineering, 30% design. That's underway, if not done already. So this is a potential project for funding. There's been some conversation. Years ago, I believe it was 2015 or 16, we went out and did a survey of some sidewalk gaps, some neighborhood gaps, some on some main roads in town. We have resurrected that, begun taking a look at it, but that's an area that has been expressed of interest.
Yeah, I think if I recall, that was some of the original, Sheila, some of the original things y'all was concerned with, sidewalk gaps and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think if I recall, we kind of put it on the back burner because we was trying to get the sidewalk for years up to the high school. That became the main priority, but
Right.
that's finished though, right? The high school is connected.
Still,
Sure, a little piece.
we didn't get to Quarry Road, and we're gonna pursue probably safe after school. Safe, what is it, school? Safe routes to school. Safe routes to school, for to fill up the gap, final step. It also, when I reviewed that plan, it was instrumental in identifying the Main Street areas that were filling up with the Main Street project. This over here and down all the way. My review of it is, most all of it is on DOT roads, that were pretty big dollar items, and I'll try and get you a summary of that report. I provided to the mayor, and I don't know if you've had a chance to comment on it, but I'd like to figure out how to best get that information out to you, because it's pretty convoluted. But my take on it is, personally, the gaps are areas that are gonna be in areas that are not annexed into town quite yet, or addressed by development in the future. We've got most all the gaps completed in developed Rolesville. Does that make sense? In areas that are, except for the one that you've talked about before, which is on Grand Falls Boulevard, that has a nice path on it now that is used every time I go by.
That could get developed,
Always could be, that should be.
and I
developed.
keep hearing it is, so,
Yeah. But other than that, I didn't, and I'll try and figure, I'm gonna provide you an advance, but I don't see, big gaps that you may want to address, but I'll stand corrected when you all look at that report and see.
And a lot will be addressed on Main Street, obviously, with the Main Street project.
the big ones come to my mind, which I think is in town. It doesn't connect from Granite Falls to your neighborhood. It's a couple properties in there that
Right.
did
Where,
not.
where is that?
Willoughby's?
Yeah, well, Willoughby's, it stops at Willoughby's.
Yeah,
It's nothing between Willoughby's and
The credit union.
the credit union, that's right. It's a gap, big gap between Willoughby's.
Sidewalk across the street from the stoplight up to where Domino's at.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking about, too.
And the one at Bojangles, that was one too, but that's going to be corrected with
That'll be kept.
that development.
And then the other one is one Paul talks about all the time. It's the new neighborhood down there, Chandler's Ridge, which those folks walk out in the road, to get through there. So,
I'll only get you a map and a report and what you're trying, and I'd love your input on it. It's several $100,000 to fill these gaps. Some are like the one for credit union to Willoughby, goes across unannexed tract of land. So you have to,
That is true.
Condemn.
condemn it potentially, or seek it. So there is those components that are still out there.
We should have a map already, because we spent a lot of time on those maps. I remember those maps like yesterday. I think JG has those maps. Do you have those maps, JG? Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, they found, I think y'all found them. That was before your time, I think.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
yeah, it's been a minute.
I'll draft up, Mayor, and I'd like your input, what I gave you, but I'll get something to you all very soon, see what you all think.
Yeah, and I think it got sidetracked because of, like I said, the long sidewalk. And also, we've had a lot of resurfacing done that, I don't know if you're going to talk about that or not. We got some resurfacing need to be done. That's going to be competing with that money, right?
Right. All money.
Yeah, power money.
All right. So going into the second category on that last column is continuing the work that we've already done at Redford Place Park, because now we've moved into that maintenance category of your strategic plan. and continuing the work at Redwood Place Park to now replace the lights on fields A and B, so that all 3 ball fields would be on a consistent program and maintenance agreement. The next one is one that some of you may also remember is Resurrected. It's the concept of having a shelter and some restrooms at Millbridge Nature Park. So that was on a plan many years ago. Kind of fell off with some other priorities, but that is a potential project for you to consider if you're looking to do some small parks projects. The next 2, under mix of programs, these really relate pretty directly to your ADA transition plan. A good number of recommendations in that plan had to do with things at some of our parks facilities. And so this ADA improvements at Main Street Park would address, I believe, a substantial proportion of those improvements. It would include a pour-in-place playground. Well, it's not really the playground. It's the pour-in-place materials underneath the playground. Yes, not an actual playground, but something that's safe and makes that playground more accessible to all abilities.
That's that corky stuff, ain't it? That's pretty nice stuff. It's really good.
It also includes picnic table replacements. That was a big notation in the ADA transition plan, that we don't have any picnic tables that are accessible for easily accessible for wheelchairs. And then the ones we have are getting a little old. It's time for a refresher, so this would replace those picnic tables. And then finally, $60,000 for parking lot improvements. There were also several ADA compliance issues noted in that in the parking lot for that facility. So that's ADA improvements. The second one in that category addresses some of the ADA issues at Millbridge Nature Park. And again, a lot of the things there had to do with access, wheelchair access, et cetera, for the amphitheater. So it's part of it's ADA, and some of it is just renovating the amphitheater and stage at that facility.
I have a question going back to the park. Does that include the playground equipment?
I believe this is just so it's not the equipment, but the material, it's just the material underneath of it.
So when does that get addressed? Because I remember that came up in conversation.
The playground itself.
Yeah, because I remember we had somebody come in who said that her child couldn't play because
So
the equipment was too
The
high.
lower playground is due for replacement in a couple of years. The upper playground probably has 10 more years on it.
So is there anything that can be done before a couple of more years?
Yeah. Do you want?
Yeah, because we had, she had,
Yeah,
she
I
brought a
don't know.
good point to that
I
one.
think there's some equipment, as Michelle was trying to say, there's some equipment that can be used for disability type
Okay, I
kids,
see.
more or
Okay.
less. And, you know, I don't know, we don't have any equipment that disability kids, do we?
Yeah.
And we spoke about that
So,
at the
yeah, so that's good. That's something to note. I do know there's some other brainstormed ideas that I think staff will be talking about with the advisory board a little bit, and perhaps they can come up with some other
That could be
alternatives
just a
as
little
well.
small addition or something.
Yeah.
Rather than replacing all the equipment, you know,
Right. Yep.
I don't know.
Okay. Okay, good. Noted. Yep, and then the amphitheater renovations, also for ADA accessibility as well as refresh. And then finally, under enhanced appearance this is a number of small projects we packaged together to call beautification. This was things like updating the landscaping at the gazebo, installing a more modern, I think now the fence on Main Street's a split rail. So upscaling that a little bit better to a more attractive fencing. Painting some of the structures at the park, and invasive plant removal. So just some general park beautification at Main Street Park. So again, these were just some alternatives that staff had come up with if you all were interested in having some smaller park projects.
Yeah, see, Amy, I think if I recall, our consultant said that our impact fees, Parks and Recreation, should not be part of a financing plan. It should, and we don't have a policy around our fees, what we use them for, do we?
So thank you for mentioning that. So there are a number of these projects on this list, in this last column, that will have to be funded with general fund dollars. Your Granite Acres Greenway, that's new construction of Greenway, that could potentially use your impact fees, because we're guided by that legislation that was enacted by the General Assembly. And it really talks about construction, not maintenance or refurbishment.
Or any kind of replacement
That's going to have to be with general fund dollars, generally, yes.
or improvements.
Yeah, your park beautification, the amphitheater. Now, your shelter and restrooms, the new shelter and restrooms, that's sort of adding capacity to your park. That might be something that we could use park impact fees for. And then the greenway, everything else is going to be general fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess what I was thinking or trying to get at, we don't have a policy of how we use those fees, do we? I mean, that consultant said not to use it for certain things. We don't, in other words, like, I think we created sort of a policy around our power bill money that we was gonna use it each year or something like that to keep it in use.
I guess, are you saying you want more than what the statute says?
No, what I'm saying is, if there's a policy that says that the parks can spend whatever they receive in impact fees that year for capital improvements, that we would, you know, in other words, going into the budget process, you kind of know, you kind of have some funds, you have a policy set aside on what your spending is, so you're not starting from scratch. Because I think we've been some years and not really done any kind of.
So I'm listening carefully. Are you talking about a financial policy, not a use policy?
I think it's both.
Both.
I think it's both. I think it's both. In other words, let's say Parks and Rec bring in $200,000 in fees, or you project them to be $2,000 in fees, you know, next year. Well, maybe Parks and Rec department can say, we need these $200,000 for these projects, like in a policy type thing.
Well,
Rather
Yeah,
than
the
trying to
thing-
find a funding
Yeah,
for them.
Yeah, the thing we have to be careful with is that those impact fees are subject to that state level legislation, that local act.
Yeah,
And
that's your
so-
job.
Yeah, and
That's your
so
job to say, you know.
We have to be really careful, and that's why I think and generally why they're included in a capital plan rather than, you know, letting too much discretion.
I'm not saying discretion, I'm saying more of a policy in knowing that every year, there's so many projects that will be funded from the impact fees. In other words, the JG and his folks and all will know that they're gonna have a certain amount of funding, 200,000, whatever it is that's in the projection, that will be used for park improvement, new projects, new things, rather than starting at zero every year and then have to ask for each little thing, you know? Does that make sense?
I think we need to think about how we program that money, because our programming it's really strategic. And you probably build a capital on your programming of that use of those funds. So I think we need to spend time on this to talk through it a little bit more with you,
Yeah.
to show what we do to program that out and how it is used towards this year's and future CIP in allocation methods. I'm not, I don't want to say I'm not in favor, but I don't know if you want to just say you shall have X dollars a year. Because I think it really comes down to your decision on how you want to use that and allocate it.
Yeah, I think what I'm driving at, maybe trying to get back to it, is kind of what our consultant says. You know, we're not going to be using it for just building up to finance with. We're going to be using it for projects, you know.
So using it for pay-as-you-go versus using it to pay debt service on
Right.
a larger project.
Right, and I think that's what they told us.
Right.
Yeah, I think he was saying that there was some capacity to do some of that pay-as-you-go within what was available.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because really, if you using it to pay off debt service, and you don't get any more development in 1 year, you don't have any You
Yes.
can't pay off that debt service.
Absolutely, yes. And that's one of the things we try to be very careful with, because these impact fee revenues do go into that model that Davenport does. And so we always have an ongoing conversation of wanting to be very
Yeah,
conservative.
Yeah,
with
it's
that.
different, it's different ways to look at it, but I think one way I'm looking at it, you always have some projects that you would spend impact fees on.
Right, some pay-as-you-go type thing.
Pay-as-you-go.
So again, and that's where I think
And
on
I
this
think some
list,
of these
that
are that.
shelter.
Yeah, some of these can work as that.
Yes, exactly.
So I
Exactly.
guess what I'm saying is, we don't need to come to any day and knock all those out because, we can't fund them or whatever. You know
Right,
what
you
I'm
might
saying?
want to play those out strategically.
right.
Exactly, yes. And again, I think there's some other ideas that perhaps with some further vetting, we might be able to add to this
Because
list.
there's
as
been
well.
some years we didn't do any of these little projects, right?
Yeah, yep,
Just because it's in that column doesn't mean we're going to come in and say it needs to be. When it says CIP model, that's the 5-year CIP.
Right.
yes.
But I also see from the funding, it doesn't address even near the gap of what we need. I think you called out something, you said 400,000 in Parks and Rec fees went towards something. I can't remember what it was. 7 million?
Tonight? Oh, yes, so in that community center project budget,
Right, community center.
we
That's
had
what you said.
allocated $400,000 of the park, to pay for the design, essentially, is what
Gotcha.
that was for.
But what I'm trying to say is, all of this maintenance part and these replacement things that we need to do, that has existed, will continue to exist until the end of time, right? But the farm was an added thing. So we're trying to do the farm at the same time. So now we're like going alongside. And there's just not enough funding to do it all. So that's why I think the funds keep getting usurped into the farm, because it kind of has taken this thing. So it feels like, to me, the board needs to make a decision. Is the farm a priority, or are these little other things a priority? And figure out which is going to come first, the chicken or the egg. You can't do it all. So that's what I hear, the competing conversation of, we want to do the farm, want to do it, develop here, we got to activate this thing, we've had it for a long time, and then we got all these other competing things. So to me, it sounds like we need to prioritize what needs to happen in that arena. That's how it feels to me.
I think that's what you're trying to do with the CIP, is kind of set it out in bars.
I know, but we put them all out
Yeah.
there, and just like we put everything on the campus, we know we can't do everything at once. So you kind of have to come up with the 1, 2, 3 and put some order to it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the conversation, both with the ADW presentation and then again
Right.
with this, is to stimulate that conversation so that we can have that now. That helps us put that 5-year CIP
Right.
model together for you to then consider for adoption for the next go-round.
And I want to loop back to the sidewalks, because I know that we can't fill all the gaps, and that probably isn't smart anyway to just go around filling gaps necessarily. But if there are citizen concerns, or there are trip hazards, I want to make sure that those are being taken care of. That is a maintenance, and we have to do that as a town.
Yeah, and people walking the street with baby carriages.
Yes. And the trees are kind of tearing up some of the sidewalks too. I know there's an issue in the village. I don't know if that's been fixed. I haven't walked over there lately. But that is going to occur. So yeah, just want to note that.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. All right, so any other questions, comments, feedback on CIP items?
We need money.
I know.
We are taking donations.
So anyway, things for you to think about. If you do have further comments, Mayor, it looked like you're about to say something.
No, go ahead, finish your CIP.
Yeah, so if you do have further comments, thoughts on any of this, I know the manager would appreciate having some feedback and thoughts to help us, inform us to come up with that CIP model.
Right. So I guess you're moving in O&M next, operational. It's been almost 2 hours. I think this is a good time. Let's take a 10-minute. You catch your breath. You catch your breath and get ready for the operational standpoint. We're going to be in German to 8 o'clock by that clock right there. So thanks, board. Thank you. Mike's back on. I call the meeting back to order, and Amy, it's all yours again.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so before we move on, everybody's good capital? Any final questions or comments?
I just have one quick question. I'm not even sure where it goes. The road for the farm, the funds for that, how does that work? The entrance?
The entrance. So if I recall correctly, that project is all being funded from dedicated park fees.
That was this year too, wasn't it?
That is that's this year's budget. You allocated, you did a capital project ordinance for $550,000 for everything, for the engineering as well as construction of that entrance.
And that's another one that won't take place this year, is it? It will.
We should still be on schedule a little bit this fiscal year, right?
Our goal is to go to bid in June-ish timeframe, so this summer go to bid and start construction in this calendar year.
In June, but doesn't it end in June? Oh, calendar year.
From the calendar year.
Calendar year,
But not
okay.
the town year.
So just a clarification, because we were talking about this, has DOT approved the second entrance?
Yet.
That was gonna be my next question. I wonder.
Right, I believe we go to the CA committee, the Control Access Committee, in March is what we're scheduled right now.
In March.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Because they're the ones who's requesting it, correct?
Yes, ma'am, the town is the one making the request. One for a relocation of existing control access break, and then for a second entrance. So it's two requests that we're making.
So when you talk about the funds that are set aside for the park, does any of this happen before those two entrances are approved and completed?
That's why we're paused at 60% design right
Okay.
now. So once we get final DOT, then they can get to 90 fairly quickly. It's just a matter of, they're kind of got a game plan A and a game plan B.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Amy, I do have one thing before you move on to operations, and I forgot. I had this question a long time ago. It just came back. I see a lot of things about improvements, and I love park beautification and different things. I had mentioned to the board, I don't know if it's last meeting or meeting before, but within the last 30 to 45 days, that I think we need an appearance commission. I think that's a great thing to have. A lot of communities have them, and I think we're at that juncture where it's a need for that. So I would like to propose that we put that on an upcoming work session item and get that going, because they could work on some of this stuff.
Isn't there already an appearance committee that you were running? Not anymore?
There was one that started, but it never became official. I think we should have an official
Okay.
appearance commission, just like we have a planning board, just like we have a Parks and Rec board, that focuses on those things that are not
Yeah.
technical specs, but
We never got the tree one going either, did we?
We owe you more information on that too, and get that started.
Yeah, there's a couple of them we need to get working on.
and some of them need to be combined, because what I find in smaller towns is a lot of people are doing duplicate work, so we can combine or collaborate on some
Could do
effort
that.
too.
Combine the tree and the beautification together.
But if we could get that on a workshop session, that would be great, so we can get that started. Thank you, that was it.
Okay, so now we're on to part two, which, again, fairly short. It's a preview of some things we've been talking about with the operating budget. It is by no means an inclusive list, okay? So there's plenty other things we'll be talking about with that, but we did want to just hit a few of these highlights because either these are really important things that we've been talking about or things that we know you all have expressed some interest in, or things that are very large strategic items that we want to make sure that we're all comfortable with. And some of these, we're still filtering through a lot of these. So some may be in this upcoming budget and some may be in a future year, or we're still trying to work through, or maybe multiple years, right? So we're still working through a lot of things with these, but we did want to just touch on some of the things we're talking about. There's been some interest in an outdoor museum as a parks project. So there's been some conversation about initiating that with perhaps the first station for that.
What is that? I don't want to make assumptions.
Yeah, I am not even going to begin to try to define that.
Director,
I'm gonna
could
let
you
the expert do
share
that.
that? What does that, What's the vision, or what's your thought behind that?
Right, so in the open space greenway plan that was just adopted, there's an appendix that the open space and greenway committee worked on doing these outdoor museums where they're more of historical markers or monuments to dedicate some kind of piece of history or Rolesville knowledge. Or it could be something where it's on a plaque where it's just giving some information, or it could be like a park bench, a wayfinding station or a bike station, things like that, to just bring more history and knowledge. I think one that came to us that was the initiative for this one would be inside Main Street Park near some of the rock outcroppings to kind of dedicate some history, or just, again, just a place-making station inside the parks. And as some of these subdivisions get developed, if there's something that's historic inside that subdivision, some developers could, as part of their greenway requirements, do one of these museums along the way as well.
Gotcha.
I think the mayor may have a little more knowledge too. I think he worked a little bit
I think you're right. There's some natural features like waterfalls that you can highlight a waterfall, like most people don't know where Granite Falls waterfall is.
The quarry, is it called quarry?
The rock, well, that's outside of town.
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah,
never mind.
so, but I would think maybe this is a good one to have a presentation done by the group that's working on that to show the board what their thoughts on a museum would be.
I think Commissioner Vogel, this came from him to me. As part of this, he wanted to bring this up, and he wanted to go ahead and see that plan to get activated and bring up an idea of getting one going. So I think we were gonna bring it to you in the budget. We could introduce it at that time, and then if you want to do more on it, you could probably invite that group or such, but
I
there's.
don't know if we don't, maybe the commissioners want to see it before the budget. I mean, just to see what they're putting in the budget,
We could try and get them in here or something. Let me see what we can do. But
And maybe a 20 or 30-minute kind of item. I guess Derek, is he the main person or something?
But he was the lead for the Open Space and Greenway Committee who kind of spearheaded this project, yes, sir.
So whoever's knowledgeable can kind of show some examples of what they're talking about. I don't know, I've seen the presentation, anything.
And also, when we're thinking about history, because they mentioned it with the I don't forgot the name now. ADW, I was about to say A&W. ADW group about history. I guess someone gave that input, and we've talked about history a lot. And there is a lot of history in Rolesville. Some of it's not so pleasant. So as you know, myself, the mayor, Commissioner Austin, and Commissioner Sneed went to Alabama in December, and the George Taylor lynching that took place right outside of Rolesville. I want us to highlight the good things that happened, but I also want to highlight and pay homage to people that, where a situation happened. I'm actually going to be working on that commission going forward to make sure that we bring this to Wake County, but I think that would be a good part of an outdoor history. That's why I was asking, what would that include? So I think it would be good to mark that. And then I know there's a point that's the highest point. Is it the highest point in Wake County that's in Rolesville? Another good marker that we could have. So I like the idea, but I don't want us to lose sight of things that we need to highlight that may not be so pleasant, but it's a part of our history, of our American history, yes, of our Rolesville history. Okay.
Cool.
Great, thank you for explaining that.
Yes, thanks, JJ.
Also, this year, we've conducted a police organizational study. I believe you'll be getting a report on that next month,
21st of March.
21st of March. So maybe some budgetary items that come out of that.
Yeah, a comment, and this is just FYI, Chief, and no action item, anybody, but I know at the Mayor's Association meeting last night, it's been a lot of talk about schools and, weapons and closure of schools and stuff, and I know it's a couple towns that has resource officers in the middle schools. I think is a county person in the middle school now? Yes, sir. So, it may be fine, but I think if this continues, it may be more thought around resource officers, if there's enough of them and all, and maybe you've considered that, but I would say think about that, as you put your budget together the next few years, do we need to be more than what we're doing? Especially we don't have anything in elementary, I don't think, and
Nothing in elementary, just, we do supply to high school Majority of the high schools in Wake counties have one.
I think it's Apex have a roving person. I don't know if you heard about that or not, but they have a roving, you don't know where they're gonna be at, but they're gonna be at one of the elementary schools or something like that, but just a thought, because, you know, it seems like it's getting more and more of that.
Appreciate that.
Other big strategic item, fire unification. There are parallel resolutions between the fire board and this board with a projected July 1, 2024 unification date. To prepare for that unification, there are a few budgetary items that will be in the upcoming budget for that. Particularly, most of those will hit right before the unification, but we need to make plans for those. There's been some interest and conversation about need for an affordable housing plan, so we'll be looking at that as we go through the operating budget. Something we've been talking about for several years. We've done some stormwater mapping. Now we need to continue talking about stormwater plan and any permit requirements. Now that we've hit that 10,000 population, there are some additional stormwater requirements being put on our community, and we need to continue working on those. We have a renewed focus on grant opportunities. We're going to take a little bit a different perspective and a little more strategic perspective on those for this upcoming year. So we're hoping to have some good things to report there. Town Hall HVAC replacement. This ties in a little bit with the last presentation with the ADW. This building we are in was built in 2008, and all those HVAC units are getting ready to go. So we need to think about replacing those. It might make sense to go and do all at once, maybe stage those out over a couple of years. Again, we're working through the recommendations here. And then finally, the biggest part of your budget and the biggest investment you make is in your personnel. And as a growing community, there are growing needs for staff. So we are fielding personnel requests and also looking at compensation for those employees that we do have. As we all know, we are in a challenging economic environment. So
Is that based on a study or something? Did we have a study recently that's going to impact the budget, anything from?
Last year, we did the study.
So we don't have an impact this year to the budget?
a
This
pay,
year-
pay study.
What's that?
I'm sorry, just a pay study? Is that what you're, yeah, okay.
Right, we're not going to redo the pay study, but we're going to go ahead and extrapolate from that pay study and keep it and use it for our recommendations.
Right.
So if there's any other, again, this is not all-inclusive, trust me, but if there's anything else that is of particular interest to you that is not here, again, I know the manager would appreciate hearing some feedback either tonight or over the coming days, if there's something in particular you want to make sure it gets addressed. So, and with that, that is all I have.
So, I don't see anything in here from the planning department particularly.
How about personnel and compensation?
Everything is in there, but I'm thinking more about like, I don't know, I really think it's important to get our ETJ expanded. I've been talking about that for years, and I'm at that opinion, I think we need to contract that out instead of trying to do that in-house,
Yes.
because we don't have the personnel to do that, but it's just we don't have control over a lot of property that we should, and I would love to see something in there for that.
You'll see it addressed probably in that personnel compensation piece, and then how that would roll out to assist in that effort.
I got you. I think I'm following you there.
I do have a question about that. Someone had asked a meeting or two ago where the new construction is going to be starting on Mitchell Mill and Jonesville Road, and that gap in between, they asked were they going to be incorporated or not? And I think
No.
the answer was no. So how does that work, though?
Say that again, I missed part of it, yeah.
There was like a chunk in between the beginning of Jonesville Road and the end of Jonesville Road that is not going to be Rolesville.
Oh, it'll be
It's
gap.
just like Stonewater. Stonewater's way out. It's a big gap between us and Stonewater.
Well, why wouldn't it be, though? Wouldn't it be easier? Because all those kids are all Rolesville kids.
We're not allowed to, I don't think. Is that right?
That's correct, Mayor. In most circumstances, annexation is voluntary. So the property owner would have to petition to be added to the town.
Yeah. It used to be if you could do a donut around them, you could do it, but you can't even do that no more, can you?
Correct. Until the General Assembly reworked the annexation laws, North Carolina didn't have the donut problem. Once you were able to deliver a full set of services and you were contiguous to the area, the town could annex the area into the municipal limits.
Right. Now, what the difference is between Jones Dairy, what Michelle's talking about, and Stonewater, is all that area between the Stonewater and us is in our ETJ, but between us and Mitchell Mill development, it's not. It's not even in our, we don't have control over it. So that's the difference right there. Right?
That's right.
One thing I just want to throw out there, and I don't know where this falls, it may not be appropriate for that, but we talked about signage. It came up in a conversation. I'm talking about specifically the shopping centers. We were talking about the signage. I think we need a whole signage plan, but we had talked about that, and I don't know where because I guess some people were complaining about how
Right.
you can't see their signs. I don't know where that falls or if that falls in here, but I think that's of importance.
It's part of the land use code. As far as private signs, regulating private signs?
Yeah, and people being able to see what's there because you want to help your businesses. I see it as an economic development component. And even some of the appearance on the main street, hopefully it'll change, like with our lovely dollar store and the whole,
Right.
yeah. But you can't see some of the stuff. We talked about that a little bit.
That would be a regulation of development question and something that the board could refer for investigation to the staff and to the planning board. Let the planning board dig into the LDO, see where we are as an existing set of rules, and see what may or may not need to be changed, and then that could come back to the board.
Gotcha. So with that, I do want to say, we've talked about having a signage thing. I really think there needs to be a signage. I couldn't find my copy. I have something this thick where a previous committee worked on it, and they went around other municipalities and gathered kind of sign standards for, I could not find my copy, but I think I can get my copy from someone else. I'll try to find it. But I think that's important, and I know probably it's a cost to that. And that's something that could have fall under what? Parents Commission. Okay, I'll stop now.
Any questions for Amy? And I guess this is a good
Presentation,
time, I'm speaking maybe for you, Amy. This is a good time, if you got something you think you want in the budget, kind of let her know right now, right? Rather than later.
Or manager,
Right.
yeah, can communicate during the week.
When is our retreat this year?
This is kind of it. You're going to do a major retreat, March 28th.
Is it going to be here as well?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, do we want to talk about
Go for it.
timing for that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, so it's, the last few years, we've held a budget work session on the 5th Tuesday. I think, unfortunately, this year, we only have 4 Tuesdays in March, so it ends up being the 4th. But there's been some interest expressed so that we don't go too late. We wanted to throw out the potential of perhaps starting at 3 p.m. On that day. It was the 28th.
Is that
So it'd be Tuesday, the 28th, potentially. Just want for y'all to consider, if we start at 3, we can take a dinner break and then come back and finish it out and perhaps get home before it gets too late.
This is for March, you said, right?
March, yes, ma'am.
And that's the 4th Tuesday.
So
Oh,
it'll be
no,
the
I can't
4th
do it.
Tuesday.
I already know right now that I'm not going to be here.
You're not here, period, March 28th?
Is that the only date? Can you send out some date
All right,
options?
well, that's where we got it on the calendar, but you're not here, March 28th?
Oh, that's the only date, yeah.
Let me just take a look again. Well, I am actually, I think I am here. I'm leaving a couple of days before that, but I'll be back. Yes. We're having my mother's services on the 24th, so
Oh, I
I'll be in
gotcha.
New York.
Okay.
But I should be back by the 27th. Okay.
So assuming you're all here, is 3 o'clock a good time, or would you like to go a different time? Is that reasonable?
That works for me.
I'm okay with 3, I think.
3 o'clock,
You
March
okay with
28th?
3, Sheila?
I don't have my work calendar in front of me, so I can't really confirm it. I know I got a lot of March events, so I'd have to give you confirmation tomorrow.
Okay. We'll send out an email
Yep.
quickly and get that confirmed.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job,
Appreciate that.
Amy. Thank you, Amy.
Amy, yep, appreciate that. Okay, I know, kind of, that was the last item on the agenda. Kelly, anything manager you want us to speak on?
No, I do not have anything further.
Mayor, I know you wanted me to make a quick report, just as a status update. Conversations with Parker Ridge regarding a connector between the project and Young Street are ongoing. The manager and I have a conversation, another conversation with the developer tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow. Tomorrow.
That looks like it's going to hold schedule-wise. So that is scheduled for March 7th to come
Yeah.
back. Jones Dairy Storage is not holding, probably. Is not, so it'll probably be continued.
Jones Dairy Storage is,
It was.
Oh, they're not ready yet?
You
Right.
pushed those to continue to March 7th. It does not appear it's going to be ready for March 7th, so they'll ask for another continuance.
What happened to the open space right here on Main Street where the building used to be?
I know they came to planning already, and planning was okay with that.
That's on next week's agenda.
Oh, you said they were not okay?
They were.
They were, okay. I was just curious where it
Yep.
was.
That is, what is it? That is 503 South Main Street.
South Main.
Yeah, I
It's
think
scheduled.
the biggest issue with that one, if I recall, has to do with not having outside entertainment or whatever, want that, the neighbors.
It was
And they've met with all
general
the neighbors
to
now.
They didn't want like another
conditional,
bar
They
there.
wanted
Yeah.
general.
doing a
So I
general.
think it's just a condition to,
Right.
it took them a long time to come back, but.
and it's-
It's so funny because everybody keeps coming back saying, I don't want to, there will not be a tattoo shop. What is it with tattoo shops?
They don't or do?
We will not make this a tattoo shop.
It's a way to show that they've added a condition to their conditional zoning without actually giving anything up, because they never had any intention of having a tattoo shop.
Oh, okay. And that just seems to be the best one to use.
In Raleigh, the joke is that it always says helipad as the thing that you're not going to have.
Oh,
Gotcha. Okay.
Anything else, Dave? Board, anything from board? Couple items I would say, I mention is appreciation to Eric. Great job on preparing for the groundbreaking at your facility. I think that turned out really great. Appreciate that. Very good job on that. And I know Michael's not here, but I really think the groundbreaking on Main Street was a success. Good turnout, even a lot of our representatives was there on that one. One thing for the board, and I wish Paul was here, because he's the person for the tree. But Wallbrook has an open area that they are wanting to plant a tree on. And they want a tree with, I guess the caliber of it, 12 to 15 inches, which is a large tree.
Wow, it is.
And it's not that many around. And they want it with a nice canopy, so it has to be a tree that's already out in the open, because if it's in the woods, it's not. Because he said they got hundreds of trees that they're going to cut down, but none of them are really what they're looking for. They're looking for one that's been out in the open, that's really, has a nice canopy on it.
That they want to replant somewhere on their property?
Yeah, they got a natural place they want to replant it.
Okay.
He was describing that it takes a year to replant that thing. That they dig it up, put it in this big thing, treat it, take care of
Wow.
about 12 months so it don't die, and then
Yeah, the roots.
replant it.
That's awesome.
So I don't know, none comes to mind. I know y'all's tree is too big,
I
it's
know.
more than 12 inches in diameter.
That'd be great if we could.
But that's the first thing came to my mind too, but that would be, I don't know how you do that. I don't know, this thing more than probably 30 inches in diameter, probably, ain't it? Yeah,
200 years old.
yeah,
Maybe that might be a historical thing to do since you were talking about history here.
Yeah.
Put 'em back.
right. So,
What is the
But
tree?
it-
What is the age of a tree that wide?
I don't know, probably 10, 15 years old,
Oh,
maybe.
you think only 10 or 15?
Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think it'd be a lot older than
And
that.
I think he's looking for an oak too, you know, so if it's a kind of an oak type tree.
He's looking for someone to donate a tree like that, or what is he? Is he just looking for one to talk to the property owners?
He's
or-
looking for an
I
established tree,
I
right?
think he would buy it.
So, but he's looking for one in Rolesville that he'd like to approach the property owners. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what's my question? So what about the oaks out there on, Waite? Do you know where I'm talking about? It's a place that was called the Oaks. Nobody knows what I'm talking
On Wake,
about? Waite, on Waite Avenue.
98.
oh, you talking about over in Raleigh?
In Wake Forest.
Is
No?
it Wake, it's
Or like
right
Wake
on the
Forest.
Wake Forest line over there,
Or it
yeah.
might be ETJ.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I know there's some really good, I don't know what you call them, guys that know landscaping and trees, even Mike Moss. Because he's in that. Steve is another guy who's into it. They may know something.
Yeah.
We can share that with the
So
planning board.
he's looking, and, you know, I think the closest to here would be better, because, you know, I imagine the farther you have to move it, the harder it's gonna be, you know,
Yeah.
but that's, you know, he reached out today and said he's looking for a tree. You don't find that too often, but,
And this is Walbrook, you said, right?
Walbrook.
That's a good planning board question. I think
Yeah.
what
Can I ask them?
Michelle just said, that's a good
They know their, I don't even know what you call it.
trees.
Their trees, their bushes, their shrubs, you name it, they know it.
You can reach out to the garden club too.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good
point.
idea.
That's a good point. What was that?
Oh, that's good. That's a good idea. Community involvement,
Yeah,
get them engaged.
Where's Lindsay? No,
yeah, you can talk to her
that's a good
tomorrow.
point.
That's a good idea.
I like it.
You right?
But that's all I got. So, you know, I appreciate it. Good meeting tonight. Thank you,
I
Amy.
have one item.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were going to mention it, that's why I didn't. So coming up April 30th at 7 PM, the Village Church, you all know Pastor Tyler, they are going to be doing a presentation about, I thought it was just about George Taylor, but it sounds like it's going to be kind of some a big presentation about the Equal Justice Initiative and what they're doing, as well as about the lynching of George Taylor. So if you would like to attend, you are welcome to attend. I will send you all a formal invite. I'll get a more formal invite from him. But it's April 30th. I don't know the day of the week, but April 30th at 7 PM at Village Church.
It's a Sunday.
A Sunday, yeah.
7 p.m.
What
So-
time? 7 PM?
7 PM. So it's just a good way for the community and us as a board to know more about this, because I do think this is coming to Wake County. So it'd be good for us to be, as leaders, abreast of it. And then if any staff or anybody wants to attend, I will send out a formal invitation that I'll get from him.
Yeah, I think Wake County's sending a delegation down there sometime this
Oh,
month
yeah.
or next month.
That's right.
Michelle's going.
Michelle's going with them. Is that right? You going in there with
Is that on the 16th of
I don't
March?
know.
It's March,
March 16th?
hang on, I'll tell you.
Am I booked already? Do you have any idea? Okay, thanks. Oh, that's gonna be a rough one now.
March 17th, I believe. That's what I see.
I have the 16th.
Oh, hold on.
Robin has all the information.
I have a ton of emails, so.
It's
you
not,
might-
it's not a bad one, Michelle.
Yeah, it's a quick flight,
Oh, no, I just
Short
don't
drive.
do well that
Yeah,
early in the
car
morning.
ride is bad, worse than the flight.
then the flight.
Say it again?
Car ride is worse than the flight.
As long as I have me a lunch, because I don't wanna.
And we did get notice today, by the way, registration's open for the City Vision Conference in Concord. That's April 25th through 27th. Some of you expressed interest, Robin. I've told her to get on that if you've expressed interest, so you can get your hotel. So if you haven't confirmed that with Robin, please do. But she's going to get registered, so you can get registered soon, this week. So
Yeah, I won't be able to go this year, but somebody want to go, certainly.
I went last year. This is the one that was in Wilmington. I didn't see an advantage from an economic development standpoint. It's a lot of collaborating with your fellow leaders throughout the triangle and the state. But I would not be able to attend this year.
Yeah, they elect officers during this meeting, I think, do they? I think
Yeah,
they
I
do.
won't be able to go.
Anyway,
They elect them at every meeting.
no, I think it's, I'm not sure if it's this one or I believe it is this one.
What's that?
They elect officers, I think. So, if someone want to go, then we need to point you to vote if you
If there's
want
2 or 3 already going, and then I was planning on going this year just to see what, I've not been
I
in
know Hickory
municipal league one
voted.
yet. So.
Yeah, I don't
April would be
think,
good if she's still affiliated with the league stuff to go, because
Yeah.
it's good insights into
I
the,
already told Robin I want to.
yeah, that would be a
It's like
good.
when
all
you
right, we
hear,
need to make sure Robin, that she can
She's a
vote.
delegate.
then.
Mhm.
it's just really good to hear what other municipalities are doing and how they did it.
Well,
I
last year,
really
they
like that.
shared like a whole list of things that were being, well, you guys were there. That list never came out. I even said, can you email? So they went over it, but then it just kind of dissipated. So it was a good thought. Just saying. Still waiting for it.
I thought I got a couple of lists, but.
All right, you guys want to stay here longer, or?
No.
I hear a motion.
So moved. Oh.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. I think that's the only thing we voted on tonight. So any other discussion? Not all in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, board. Appreciate that.